Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Terrible Super Bowl, but it's got me jealous of having a legitimate interior pass rush. Let's go get some of those guys.
What's going on, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. Congrats to Lewis Cine with his first of what I'm sure will be many Super Bowl victories last night.
And I'm Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. I don't know what anyone is complaining about. Kwesi's first draft pick is a Super Bowl champion.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with Arif Hasan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
What's up? Welcome in. Happy Monday post-Super Bowl edition of the Minnesota Football Party on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Yes, Arif Hasan will join us in progress during the show as we react to the Super Bowl and how it impacts the Vikings. Defensive lines terrorized quarterbacks in this postseason. I want the Vikings to do that in the future. How can they do that? Who do they need to acquire? We're going to dive into that, and as well as our free agency preview, focusing on defensive tackles today. Plus, Luke Inman's prospect of the day, and we'll tell you about the miserable failures that our parlays were on the Super Bowl. Epically miserable. Luke Braun level misery for all of us on the parlays. That's all coming up on today's show. That is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel was a lot of fun for the Super Bowl, and they still have plenty of options for your wagering pleasure with NBA, NHL, college basketball. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All right, gentlemen. Patrick Mahomes who did he look like last night? I mean, pick your poison.
Sam Darnold in the wild card round? Just get the crap kicked out of him.
In the wild card round. It was that bad. Uncharacteristic performance, jarring performance as the Chiefs three-peat falls short. 40-22 they lose, and it wasn't that close. They could have lost by 40 in that game if the Eagles had really put the pedal down. But it's got me wanting a defensive line that can do that, and not just a defensive line that's built around a couple nice athletic edges who are great, by the way. I love Jonathan Grenard. I love Andrew Van Ginkel. I want them on my football teams for a long time. The Vikings do not have 4 or 5 across the line that are going to get to the quarterback. Maybe some of that's by design. Maybe they prioritize stopping the run. I get it. They can't all be first team all pros. But can we get a line that can do that once in a while? Wreck a legitimate quarterback's night. Because the Eagles didn't even blitz. They didn't even blitz, and they did that to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So, Luke Braun, how big a priority is the defensive line for you? There's a handful of priorities. Where does it rank among your priorities for the Vikes?
I'm with you. I think that presence is so important, and it's something the Vikings are missing. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's as big a priority for the Vikings as it is for us. It probably still isn't as big an emergency as corner, right? Like, they don't have corners under contract for the, ninth year in a row. It's getting to be, O-line levels of neglect here at the corner position. We just band-aid it with 1 year guys every time. And then, of course, what do you do on the other side with the O-line? The first thing, though, is still going to be the quarterback position. But what I will say about this interior pass rush is a lot of the reason that it doesn't work for teams, is that they get so, especially in draft season, we get so obsessed with the deep tackle that can pass rush. And, he's 270 pounds and he's got a quick swim move. and he gets washed out by every double team, and it's like, okay, that guy doesn't start. That guy's not an every down player. And if that guy's not an every down player, he's not a first round pick. And the guys, the Jalen Carters of the world, which I always kind of chuckle every time Jalen Carter does something, because I know the Bears fans feel the same emotion we see when we see Kyle Hamilton do stuff. But whenever Jalen Carter does that, understand that Jalen Carter is still, his primary job is still to stop the run, and he's really good at that job. And the splashy thing that he does for the quarterback is a luxury. But the run, like you can't give up the run stuff to bring in some skinny guy that can rush the passer. That gives you Hercules Mata'afas, and it doesn't work.
So I imagine that Luke Inman, you probably, when you have nightmares at night, you sit up in bed and you scream just 2 words, Jordan Davis. Because that's, again, we joked about the Lewis Cine draft. It haunts us in several ways. It haunts us because of Lewis Cine. It haunts us because we have to deal with Jameson Williams once in a while. It haunts us because of Kyle Hamilton, and it haunts us because Jordan Davis was right there at 12 as well. And the Vikings went a different direction.
I don't think that's a regret we can have. I don't think they were ever going to take a D tackle in that one. It was always going to be some kind of D. It was Kyle Hamilton was the guy there. Like, I don't know if we can go that far.
Though, because you're right. There's been Inman. There's been neglect at that position. Harrison Phillips has been fine, but he's not giving you the pass rush element. I mean, I think that you can complain about the drafts, and I think this is certainly one of the areas that, whether it's the draft or free agency, has not been bolstered to the level that is moving the needle, at least on the interior there.
Yeah, 100%. And to Luke's point, too, it makes me think of 2017 Mike Zimmer's defense, having a guy like Linval in the middle, right? Like, there was a reason that defense was so dominant and had the best third down percentage or defense, I guess, in the NFL history, even for that matter, is because they stopped the run. They won on first and second down. You do not get in positions like Patrick Mahomes was last night when you can't run the ball. And that was their problem. And then you get down a couple scores, and now everybody knows you're passing. These edge rushers can pin their ears back. We don't even need to blitz, especially if we can get home with 4 guys. I mean, that's the dream, Sam, like you talked about at the top. It's not a secret. That's the dream for every team. I mean, all these, elite teams, not just this year, but the last couple of years. I mean, shoot, you could probably go back, almost a decade now at this point, but it's the same 2 or 3 characteristics: great defense, great trenches, and then you got to have some sort of combination of a high-end head coach and a high-end quarterback. But, the Vikes, they got 2 first-round picks from last year that hardly played. One of them's a quarterback, the other one's a pass rusher. And, I personally, right now, as of today, I still think shoring up the offensive line just to make sure you got the pieces to develop that quarterback that you drafted in the top 10, give him good protection, give him a good run game, etc. That's at the top of the list. Obviously, cornerback, they need bodies, like Luke pointed out. They just need bodies. So that needs to be in the top tier of needs as well and targets. But, number 2 right behind those 2 things is, getting better on the defensive line, getting more talent. Again, they got the 3 edge rushers now set in stone for the next few years with Grenard, Van Ginkel. Hopefully Dallas Turner turns into the guy, which I think he will, that we all hope for when they drafted him in the first round. But finding some guys on the interior that can be disruptors, get in the backfield, blow up the timing of plays, force quarterbacks off their spot, hold on to the ball that extra half second, that's got to be right up there, I think, on the list as well. With, again, interior O-line, cornerback, maybe those 3. And really, I think you could pick any particular order. Now, like we've already talked about, I don't think they're going to go make a splash on the interior offensive line. I just don't think, if I was a betting man, what we would do, what we want versus what they will do, 2 completely separate conversations. But either way, you watch the Eagles dominate the way they did, not just last night, but throughout the playoffs in that last month or 2 of the season. Clearly, every team, specifically in the NFC, probably is thinking today, like, if we had to go up against that, this team next year in a do-or-die game, right, how do we beat them? And I think it starts with getting better in both trenches.
The trenches are so important, but I do want to say that, like, this is not a problem that you just say, man, they should throw more resources at the trenches. The Vikings this year were like 10th in O-line spending. And they've spent, they spent a second round pick a couple years ago on the trenches. They've got mostly drafted talent that they've extended, right? Like they've spent resources on the offensive line in particular, but there are ways to screw it up, right? You miss on the pick, that screws things up. Move guys when you're not supposed to move them, that screws things up. Look at what happened to Joe Thuney last night. They got a guard playing tackle and they got punished for it. You have to, like, if you want to build the trenches, I think everybody agrees the trenches are important. Like, there are very few people that are like, meh, you can live without an O-line. Like, nobody says that. But it's how to be successful building the trenches that's where, like, we separate the boys from the men. The difference between taking just a couple Eagles, Jalen Carter on the trenches, and someone like Nolan Smith on the trenches that is not nearly as impactful is, to me, really instructive to, like, how to you need power and tenacity much more than you need speed. And I do worry sometimes that because of what Flores does on defense, we are going to focus too much on that first step, that speed, that how well can you stunt, and end up being a fast and soft defense. Mm-hmm. And we already play a lot of dime. We already do a lot of, like, we don't really have like a thumper linebacker in the middle. Like, that's not really Cashman's game. Like, so it's not the style that we want. We don't want to be a physical bruising defense. We want to blitz a lot. We want to be fast flying. We want to hit the quarterback hard, but we're trying to get in unblocked. And so I don't don't get your hopes up, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not the way that we're trying to build it.
It's not the Flores blueprint. It isn't. You're right. It isn't.
Yeah.
If us three were building a team from scratch, maybe we do it differently. But to be fair to Flores, there is a lot of pros. There's a couple cons, but there is a lot of pros.
Yeah,
but
it's apples and oranges.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I like having that in your back pocket that you can stuff the run. It's nice. The Vikings were good at it this year, put teams in bad positions. That being said, you had 4 sacks from your interior defensive line. 4 sacks, 17-game season. I'd sacrifice some of the run defense stuff for a little more in that regard. And also, teams that wanted to run the ball, teams that were good. Say again, Braun?
Well, the thing is, if you sacrifice that run and you're in second and short all the time, you probably I don't think you get more sacks. And I think you get less from the edges too. Like those things are in tandem.
You can still have your big guys that you put in short yardage. You can still have that. What about first and second down, right? What about the clear passing downs? That's where the Vikings constantly found themselves in not getting the interior pass rush. You can do a line change. First and 10. Okay, let's put Phillips, Redmond, and Bullard in there. Great. Okay, it's second and 12. Now let's put in, I mixed that up. My point being, you have multiple personnel groupings. Now, they're building the trenches. You can build it the way the Eagles have, and you can take guys in the first round every year. Or, in my opinion, this can be like an extreme makeover defensive line addition this offseason. Because before the end of this show, you're going to hear names in a loaded defensive tackle free agency group that can not get pushed around, can get after the passer. And if you don't upgrade over Jerry Tillery and Jonathan Bullard, I think it's a bit of malpractice with the amount of cap space you have. We're assuming you have, if you go with J.J. McCarthy. I think we should get into that now, to be honest with you. Our free agency preview.
Yeah. I'm going to cape really hard for Jonathan Bullard, by the way. I'm fighting you, Sam.
Okay. A brawl coming up next on the Minnesota Football Party. We're brought to you today by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. You clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. They make it easy to post your job for free, share with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new Post Your Job feature can help you write job descriptions and quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. Here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high-quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And yes, we're having camera issues at the Ekstrom house. If you were with us last week, my camera is frozen in a very interesting, candid position.
Unveil it. Are you going to unveil it?
Yeah.
Show it. Show the people.
Yeah,
People
let's
watching on YouTube, show them.
If you missed last week, this is what my camera is for.
What is that, blue steel?
For all eternity.
Yeah. This is a screenshot from, I believe, the Twins postcast?
No, this was the Wednesday football party last week.
Oh, the Wednesday football party.
The Wednesday.
Why would there be a Twins postcast? It's
Twins postcast.
I was like, dude, it's been frozen that long? Holy shit.
Man.
Just, if I turn my face to the other side, though, it's like Harvey Dent and Batman. It's like a two-face thing.
What's he hiding? He looks like a man with a secret.
We got some scars on the other side. All right, free agency preview. We've pretty much done the whole offensive side of the ball, and to stay on task today, or on topic, we're going to go defensive tackle today. It's loaded, guys. It is loaded, where you can miss out on the first wave and still get a really good, I think, impactful veteran defensive tackle who's got a 3-down kind of game. Because he said it before the break, I'll let Luke Braun stump for Jonathan Bullard at his $2 million salary, which is all fine and good. He can come back. I'm not disqualifying him. I want to be a little more adventurous, though. But you can do your Jonathan Bullard thing. I know that you've got a soft spot. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So Jonathan Bullard in the run, fantastic. There's very little to complain about there. I don't think that that's going to be controversial. It's what he does in the pass, right? And it's important to understand how pass rushes are constructed, whether they're 4-man or 5-man rushes in any defense. They're a 4-man team thing. It's not 4 guys pin their ears back. It's not a series of one-on-ones. It is a plan. There are certain gaps you can go into, you can't go into. So when you're Jonathan Bullard, and you're never going to get the two-way go. What that means, the two-way go means you can go either to the inside gap or the outside gap, depending on what you see fit. The guy that gets the two-way go, you can't give everybody a two-way go, or they'll start bumping into each other. That's a coach that I learned this from said you never want 2 guys in the same hole. Doesn't work. The guy who gets the two-way go on the Vikings is going to be Grenard, maybe sometimes Van Ginkel, and that's kind of going to be like, it's always going to be that guy, right? So when you're Jonathan Bullard, your job is to attack half the man in whatever gap you're supposed to and push him back. He is great at that. He can push the heck out of a guy. He'll never do a swim move. He'll never do that, right? And that's probably the ceiling that you're looking for, Sam, is somebody that can maybe be the guy that gets the two-way go. And then you're making Jonathan Bullard the role player, or you're making Jonathan Grenard the role player on that play. And that can work sometimes to mix it up, right? So Bullard has, I guess my argument is Bullard has more impact on the pass rush than his stats would show, because defensive tackles in particular, when they get stats, it's so awesome. Oh my God, look at Aaron Donald, look at Fletcher Cox back in the day, and Chris Jones and all these guys. But their impact on the pass rush, I think, is one of those things that just will never be captured by a stat sheet. And I think Jonathan Bullard is good enough in that where I'm super fine to have him be an every down starter. Now, if you would still want to go down this list, and I see some guys on here that if they did join the Vikings, Jonathan Bullard becomes the 3rd guy that comes off in nickel snaps. That's great. Awesome. Be very into that. And we can talk about those names.
Great. And yeah, let's give the Shamar Stephen imitation, Jonathan Bullard. Like we liked Shamar Stephen. Mike Zimmer liked Shamar
That's
Stephen.
Not good. I don't like that take at all. He does way more than that. Shamar Stephen could not beat a guy in the run either. All he could do was just like hold his spot on a double team and get washed out only a little, so a linebacker could do all of the work for him.
Well,
Jonathan Bullard can like do the work and not make Ivan Pace bail him out every play.
So I'm okay. Fair. I'm hearing from you talk about Bullard the way the Vikings talked about Stephen. How's that for fair phrasing? The Vikings talked about Stephen in the same way.
In the past, maybe, where it's like, okay, he has a job, he does his job. It's not a glamorous job, but it's his job. But Stephen didn't do that pass rush job at all. He was completely useless in the pass game. All he could ever do is play patty cake with a guard, with everyone's worst guard. And in the run, it was, well, he's got a job, but it's not a glamorous job. And it was still like, man, can't we ask more of this guy? I think for Bullard, who can be just a disruptor in the run. He can just, on his own, break open a run play 2 or 3 times a game. He just has that. That's great. That's plenty of production for me. And then against the pass, being a role player, I think that's good enough to be a starter. And definitely good enough to be a priority to bring back. Not that we can't improve on it by bringing in, like, say, Milton Williams or somebody like that who just had a crazy game. Super happy with that. That's all great. But yeah, Shamar Stephen comp is too far for me. I can't do it.
Okay, so Arif Hasan joins
Underrated.
in progress.
Underrated.
Arif Hasan NFL. We're arguing about need at defensive tackle, free agency preview. Luke Braun is in love with Jonathan Bullard, and who isn't, frankly. But let's not settle for the light-hitting shortstop as your cleanup hitter. Let's knock him down to the 7th spot in the lineup where he's probably better suited, and let's get an actual power hitter in their batting cleanup. Inman, actually, let's hear from Arif. We haven't heard from him yet. Arif, we're going to throw you right in. Do you want the Vikings to aggressively pursue defensive tackles, and who might that be? Hello.
You can't hear.
To me, that's a bit of a luxury. Hello, can you hear me? Is that
you're on a
there's a crazy delay? Okay.
Significant
17-second delay. New record.
Oh my god.
Welcome to stream. Yep, that's
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
All right, he's going out now.
All right,
he's
fair
dropped.
enough,
Luke Inman,
fair
take it
enough.
All
away.
right, Sam. Oh yeah. Okay.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
I was
on
just
the
gonna
Bullard
say
train,
Sam
man.
drop your names,
You
but-
know I'm on the Bullard train, man. Hey, if we're just talking about go get the best players and this was Madden and we turn the cap off, sure, yeah, there's better players, there's better defensive tackles than Jonathan Bullard. But for the bang for the buck you get, and no, he is not a game changer, but I'm with Braun in the fact that I want him in that rotation, and he does add a lot of value, especially for the price tag. Is there more game-changing type of defensive tackles in this class, especially, or in the draft, which we'll get to? Yeah, absolutely. But, 53 guys, you need 53 of them. You got 10 or 11 defensive linemen when it's all said and done in that rotation. I want Jonathan Bullard in that rotation. Maybe not in the same necessarily role or getting as many snaps. I think that's your point, Sam. Like, maybe take them off the field a little bit more on, whatever it may be, obvious pass rushing situations, things like that, which, they kind of already did. But, you look at this free agency class, Milton Williams, as we saw last night, and he's been doing this all year, by the way, former 3rd-round pick. He's going to be the stud at the top, it feels like, just like Trey Smith at guard that we've talked about with the free agent interior class. He's kind of like the crown jewel at D-tackle. It means you're probably going to have to overpay for him, though, right? And there's a lot of guys that I would feel like is going to give you better bang for the buck. And that's probably, too, we're just learning now, going into, is this offseason 4 now already for Kwesi, or is this 3? Either way, like, we kind of know his tendencies, right? He's going to look for the bang for the buck. It is a kind of pick your flavor kind of free agency defensive tackle class. In fact, the draft class for defensive tackles is kind of the same as well. What do you want, though? Do you want run stoppers? Do you want interior pass rushers? Do you want guys that are versatile and can line up in multiple spots? I've always liked Jaron Reed. I looked up earlier this morning at 11% pressure rate. 11% pressure rate for a defensive tackle is super solid. 4.5 sacks last year. Again, like Luke pointed out, take some of the sack numbers, though, and even TFL sometimes, with a little bit of a grain of salt with these interior defensive tackles. Sometimes it's more about what they open up for their teammates and other guys as well. But 32 years old, little long in the tooth, but again, can line up in multiple spots. DJ Jones is on that list too. He was a monster versus the run. So again, pick your flavor. What do you want? I think after watching the Eagles, Sam, I can tell you're after that kind of interior pass rusher, which I totally get. It would be very nice to have one of those guys, but it's a pick your flavor as far as, I got the top 10 defensive tackles in this free agency class pulled up. There's a little bit of everything in here once you get past Milton Williams, who, again, they got money. They got money. Granted, they need to fill a lot of positions, but they can go make a splash if they want to go get a Trey Smith or Milton Williams. I just don't think they will, and I think we should probably temper expectations. So after Milton, again, Jaron Reed just feels like a lot better bang for the buck if they want to go that route.
I think there are some 2-year deals here. That would be a really nice Quasi-ish contract, 2 years, $24 million. I think Jaron Reed's one of those dudes. And at 32, I think he's still a dude. I also think you could look at BJ Hill. He's almost 30 years old. Great against the run. He's still going to do a little bit in the pass rush game. Poona Ford, probably like third wave free agent. I think ups the bar from the Tillery Bullard duo. 29 years old. Price is going to be good. Doesn't get pushed around. You can go find some 280-pound quick dudes like Braun talked about, but there are some 310-pound guys on this list that can rush the passer. They can stop the run. They can do a little bit of both. And I think that that's what you're aiming for. Maybe not, the number one guy on the list. PFF has it as, I want to get the name right too, Osa Odigizua, 26. He might be the top prize. I don't know if he stops the run that well. I don't need him. That's fine. I'll let him go somewhere else for top dollar. I'll get the third or fourth guy if they can stop the run. And I think there are guys like that. Let's see if Arif Hasan has caught up to us after the insane levels of lag have really got the chat riled up. I mean, they are absolutely loving it. Arif.
All right. How are we doing delay-wise here?
We're doing better. We're doing better.
Am I interacting with the correct conversation? Okay, great. Yeah. So what I was going to try to get at is that I think that defensive tackle is a little bit more of a luxury. We've talked a little bit about how the Vikings don't really have the kind of cap flexibility that their cap kind of number sort of suggests. And I would say that this is kind of a lower area of need, right? Just because the way the Vikings run their defense doesn't require as much in terms of interior pressure. They ask a lot more in terms of run defense than they do pass rush. A lot of these guys, rotation kind of helps out with that. And so finding guys that are pretty good against the run, this is kind of why I think Luke wants Jonathan Bullard. Finding guys who are pretty good against the run that have the ability to kind of make some waves as a pass rusher is like a really big part of the way the defense is set up. And so while I wouldn't mind just happening to have Milton Williams on the roster, I don't think that, spending a lot of money on that kind of guy makes a ton of sense for the way that this defense in particular is run. Now, I think that Brian Flores is versatile enough that if Kwesi was like, this is the guy, this is going to help us, and he, lands Milton Williams or whatever, he'll find a way to make the most out of that investment. Like, I'm not upset about that, but I do think that, going in on some of these guys wouldn't make like a ton of sense. Like Osa Odigizua, I think would be, would cost way too much. I didn't even know he was going to be a free agent. That's wild. He's going to cost a lot. But that's the kind of guy that I think, like you mentioned, Sam, is probably, the first wave of free agency, probably not, somebody that you want. That said, I do want to go after kind of younger guys. I don't want to just go after the Jaron Reeds, who I think would be a fine addition. But, going after somebody like a Bobby Brown, right, who is a pretty decent player, is not going to cost a ton of free agency, has the ability to do some stuff against the run, also can be a pass rusher. Those are the kinds of things that I think make a lot of sense for the Vikings. Otherwise, you can go after kind of veterans in the middle of their career, people, the 28, 29, 30. Like, I think Mario Edwards Jr. from the Texans kind of fits this role that we're talking about, that can kind of fit, 5 tech, 4 tech, 3 tech kind of stuff, that you're not necessarily replacing somebody like Harrison Phillips, but you're getting somebody who's got the ability to rush the passer. I just don't want to spend too much at this position. So I think we're going to see a lot of guys that were like, oh, yeah, no, he's in the league, more than guys like, man, I'm really excited that we got him. And I think that that's the right approach.
What about Levi Onwuzurike? Almost
27 last. Are there any oft-injured DT? There's your Kwesi pick. 27.
Yeah, that's what I was actually, yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. Guy who's injured all the time will be kind of undervalued because of it. I mean, that was the reason I just said no off the bat. I was like, nah. He's kind of interesting because he's actually really difficult to evaluate because the first couple of years he's playing with a bad back. So it's not just that he has injuries that are taking him off the field. It's that when he's on the field, his injuries are slowing him down a lot. He had the worst pass rush win rate of any defensive tackle in the NFL over I think the first 2-3 years of his career, something like that. Now this year he plays really well, and I think a lot of it is because he's recovered from injury. Is that the guy you're going to? I don't know. I mean, statistically, it does generally bear out that people who have their market depressed for injury-related reasons are a little bit more likely than most free agents to, pay you back, right? To be good values, to make more in terms of their value than the amount that their contract cost. And so I understand the approach. But some of these guys, it's just a little bit too much for me. And Wuzurike has just been hurt the whole time. Okay, James Cunha says he only missed one game this year. No, I know he was great this year, James. I'm not talking about this year.
Took off.
When you've got back issues, that's always scary.
Yeah.
10%, yeah. No one used to have a bad back, right? Like,
yeah.
No, he's much better this year, but it's about the history of injury, the fact that the injury impacted his like level of play for the first couple of years of his career. So I'm probably going to stay away. It would make a lot of sense if the Vikings grabbed him.
Kwesi likes the opposite. He likes healthy career coming off an injury, right? That's kind of his style, not the.
Well, no, that's not what Marcus Davenport was. Davenport was injured the whole time.
Yeah. Kwesi's worst move by far. On Wuzurike, it feels like you're buying high, like you're buying him certainly at his highest point of his career, which might not be the most value proposition based bet. I still think, I mean, if it's not a 26, 27-year-old, I'm okay with that. I'm okay if they're 29, 30, if it's a short deal. And I think that could happen. But let me ask you guys two questions. Number one, we've talked a lot about Bullard, but is Jerry Tillery coming back to this team? I would say no. I would say absolutely not. Do you guys disagree?
Yeah, that's a just a guy to me. Dean Lowry memorial role.
Got replaced by Redmond.
Sure. Yeah, Jalen Redmond took his job. I don't know if he returns to the Vikings at all. If he could, sure. But yeah, that he doesn't.
Well, I don't know that he has a market. I think he played better for the Vikings than he played anywhere else. He got a game ball.
He got a game ball.
Yeah, and he played better for the Vikings than he played anywhere else and still got benched.
He's good.
Inman, you're not stumping for Tillery?
What I'm saying is no one's going to pay him. You might be able to get him for a vet minimum.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
okay,
totally
but
fine.
they've got
you can bring him in cheap to camp, sure, on a vet min or whatever, $1 million.
But I don't think it fills a need. I don't think you feel like a problem is solved.
He's not moving the needle whatsoever. He's not.
But you've also got your just guys in the form of rookie salaries. You've got Jalen Redmond now. You've got Taki, and you've got Levi Drake. Like you have those three dudes now that can compete probably at a similar level as a Jerry Tillery, one would hope. And then so you let Tillery walk. You bring in someone that can make plays in free agency. Just one guy. I'm not greedy. I want one guy. Give me one dude in free agency. Second question: do you guys think the Redmond, LDR, Taki, can any of those three be a starter, full-time starter on this defensive line?
Not in a way that changes how you play free agency. Like, sure, go win a camp battle against somebody if we bring in someone unserious. You know, if we bring in Levi on Wuzurike and he gets hurt, and then suddenly Taki Taimani is better, but I think I like those guys more as depth. There is one name I don't think I've heard yet, unless I spaced out, but have we talked about BJ Hill yet? I did say BJ. Yeah.
BJ's good, versatile.
Yeah.
Plus sacks in 4 straight years. He's good.
Dollar for dollar, that might be my favorite idea.
I just found another one on this list too. Benito Jones, mammoth, 335-pounder, only 27 years old for Miami, but an 8% pressure rate, pass rush win rate as well. So Benito Jones, again, first and foremost, need a guy who can stop the run, open plays up for everybody else. But if you can get that extra little pass rush and can disrupt and get in the backfield a little bit, kind of gravy on top for this defense. But Benito Jones, I didn't know a lot about him. Mammoth of a human being, only 27 years old. And it's got a little pass rush to him as well.
Played like 1,000 snaps for Detroit, and I never remember hearing his name. Played him like probably 4 times, and I don't remember.
I don't think Benito he was
Jones
good
at all.
He just might not have been good.
Definite possibility.
Beware of the guys that played like 10 snaps a game and then have a high pressure rate. It's like, okay, they got 1 pressure and it's a 10% pressure rate.
And it was on like 3rd down where pressure rates double and stuff like that. It's
right.
Like, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys worry about the 4-3, 3-4 fit? Like BJ Hill, I think is a 4-3 guy. Do you think that is that overrated to say that it's not a fit if you switch to a 3-4?
More of a thing in the edge where you have to cover, but not really on the interior to me.
Yeah, I mean, like there are minor considerations just in terms of, whether or not you're truly asking people to like 2-gap, in which case you want, maybe longer arms than you typically need in a 4-3 for a 3-4. But because I'm not really getting that sense from this Vikings defense, I think maybe a little bit more foot quickness, but that's just more the number of games and stunts that you kind of hope Brian Flores will continue to run. I mean, he didn't run that many when he started out with the Vikings, even though that was kind of his bread and butter with the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. So I don't think the 3-4-4-3 distinction is that important because you're not asking them to do different things based off of kind of different like talents or traits that are required of them based off of that alignment, because it's not a 2-gap, 1-gap distinction, which I think is a much bigger kind of distinction.
Inman's prospect of the day next, as well as more Super Bowl hot takes on the Minnesota Football Party. Sadly, football is done for the year, but sports are not. The NBA is getting in full swing. I already have a future. Lakers, Cavs in the final at like plus a lot. I need Luka to be Luka. Let's go, Luka. You can bet stuff like that at FanDuel. Also, NHL and college basketball. Whether whoever's going to win the opening tip, method of first basket's always fun. You can do the live lines and then try to bank on a fourth quarter comeback. Stay in the action at FanDuel. New customers right now can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel.com to get started. Try the FanDuel Sportsbook app, which is very easy to use, and you get paid instantly. Again, FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Okay, Inman's prospect of the daytime. I believe he's done one defensive tackle, and it was Kenneth Grant. That was like a first-round kind of guy, Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. Last time, Inman, you did
Noel Williams.
That's right.
Cornerback.
The mid-round corner. Liked Noel Williams. So you got today, prospect of the day.
Yeah, let's stick with the theme of the day. Trenches, building that defensive line back up. Another guy who was down at the Shrine game. Again, Noel Williams was down there, so I'm hoping Arif can maybe give us some insider info. You had boots on the ground, because I know he had a great week down there, made a little bit of money. Defensive tackle from Indiana, C.J. West, 317 pounds at just a shade over 6 foot. So not a big, tall guy. If you like the low man wins kind of dudes, maybe you want to put this guy on your list. But started at Kent State, small school, super disruptive, goes to Indiana, kind of gave Indiana more of the same what he did at Kent State. 7.5 tackles for loss, 42 tackles, 2 sacks. The 3 games I watched on tape this week, you just kind of see how much he pops out as this big, heavy, kind of thick run stopper first and foremost. That's kind of his bread and butter, kind of what we talked about as far as maybe the Vikings kind of style with those 2 defensive tackles that they usually use. And I feel like that's going to give them this kind of safe high floor as that 2-down guy. But as a disruptor getting in the backfield, that's what you're kind of hoping you can hit on, maybe develop it and kind of harness a little bit more. That's where I think he's really enticing and adds a little bit more of a, top-notch value, especially for where he's probably going to go. Right now, kind of projected middle-ish day 3. And we'll see how the combine goes and all that stuff. But middle-ish day 3, you got those 2 fifth-round picks. Maybe you go somebody like Tyler Booker, round 1 at guard. Noel Williams, who we talked about, the corner from Cal, with your 3rd-round pick, that comp pick for Kirk Cousins. Then one of these 2 fifth-round picks, maybe you go get somebody like C.J. West. Inconsistent, I'll say, is probably the word. Getting off the ball with anticipation and burst and keeping his pads low, as short as he is, 6 foot, 6'1". But it's definitely in there. I mean, it's all in the bag of tools, so to speak. It just needs to kind of be refined and burned into his brain rep after rep. And when he stays low, though, and he gets off the ball with anticipation, he's a tough dude to stop. He gets in the backfield and he blows up a lot of plays. So, kind of like Noel Williams, the corner from Cal, like last episode, it's probably not going to be when you pull up like draft rankings on some of these websites. Probably not going to be. You're not going to find him in the top 10 defensive tackles because this tackle group is so deep. And again, that to me, that just means there's going to be a couple guys that get pushed down, maybe lost in the shuffle a little bit. He could definitely be one of those guys that kind of gets overshadowed, I guess, by some height, weight, speed guys, bigger school guys, things like that. Mm-hmm. And who knows, maybe he falls right in the Vikings' lap with, again, one of those 2 fifth-round picks. So C.J. West, Indiana, defensive tackle, more of a day 3 guy.
Yeah, I like it again.
Yeah, no,
like
he was
all these guys.
Yeah, he was pretty fun to watch at the Shrine Bowl. I didn't pay as much attention to some of the defensive tackles there, but I was able to talk to a lot of people that named him as a standout. A lot of people had him as one of the two defensive tackle standouts next to Jordan Phillips. He was like a pretty. I think a lot of people were surprised, I think, is kind of what happened with him because everyone kind of liked him a lot coming in. But I think that they were surprised at kind of the number of pass rushing moves he had available to him that he was able to play off naturally. Because, like you said, he wasn't much of a pass rusher as his like primary role at Indiana. But I think the athleticism shown. I think some people were suggesting that the reason he got a combine invite was because he did so well at the Shrine Bowl. So I think that this will be kind of a fun guy to track by the time the combine comes around. And I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up early day 3, maybe sneaks into the bottom of day 2. It's tough. It's a great defensive tackle class, so kind of hard to move up the board at this position.
Yeah, for sure. Super deep. Somebody, you're going to be able to get good value, whether it's in the 3rd round or with, 2 of those 5th. And, by the time it's all said and done, not only are these rankings going to change for everybody after the combine and the pro day, maybe probably more than they should just go off the tape, right? But, the Vikings may end up with more picks as well if they trade back in the 1st round too. So, right now he just screams really good value where he's being projected. But, end of the day, if everything, checks off and he kind of checks all the boxes that the Vikings are looking for, maybe you got to use your 3rd round pick on him instead. I don't care. He just feels like a really good player to me and fits, a big need for the Vikings as well.
This is why I like doing this exercise, because it forces us to really dive in. And now that we've talked about a lot of the real heavy need positions, right? We've talked about corner, we've talked about guard, we've talked about defensive tackle, both draft and free agency. There's really no excuse for the Vikings not to address all of their needs. Using one of those 2 avenues, there is depth. There's plentiful options for the Vikings to get guys that can fill needs, create a pipeline, supplement with free agency. I think Kwesi should be able to do it all, and he's got the money to do it. Arif, you said something earlier I wanted to circle back to. You said you don't think the Vikings have as much cap flexibility as appears they do. Did you make that comment? I wanted you to clarify it in the moment.
Yeah, I've said this on like 2-3 of these podcasts now, just because they have so many snaps leaving free agency. They've got fewer cap dollars per snap or per position they want to fill than I think a lot of other people with fewer total cap dollars. It's the same thing that we've said a bunch of times. A lot of needs. Yeah.
And not a lot of draft picks either, or early round draft picks, right? They don't even have a premium 1st round pick either to kind of, hey, we're going to maybe transition from, all these free agents that are re-signing them to go get 2 studs, right? But like, we don't have a lot of draft picks though either to like throw a couple depth guys that we're going to try to develop back there either. So yeah, that does make sense to me, and probably all the more reason they probably don't get, make a big splash on a Trace Smith at guard or Milton Williams. It kind of checks out.
I could poke at that a little bit too, just to say, well, a couple of those dudes are Bullard and Tillery, right? You've got also, did they count Harrison Smith? Because he's actually under contract. Ben Gessling reported that.
Oh, did it change?
It's weird how it depends on how you
because it voids later in this year before the new league year, if I understand correctly. And I haven't read the new Ben Gessling report, so I don't know, but.
Yeah,
Gessling reported that he's under contract for basically a vet minimum, like a very low number this year, with a cap figure of, and let me see if Over the Cap has it updated, but I thought it was a good wrinkle, and I wonder if he would willingly play at this number. You can keep.
He might.
Yeah, he might too. Struggling a little bit to find it. Here we go. Harrison Smith.
It's like a weird option.
Have not updated it.
Yeah, it just depends how you count his void option, but he is, I think if nobody does anything, he will become a free agent this year.
Okay. Yeah, so it could be like a club option or something like that. And
it's
so
like a
under contract is So if that's the case, then for right now, we can, especially because we don't even know if he was going to retire. Did he say he was not going to? Like, I don't know.
He's going to think about it forever, yeah.
Right, yeah. So if we act as if that's a distinct possibility, right? Then you've got, Smith and Bynum, right? You've got all 3 corners, but you do have Blackman coming back, so that helps with that a little bit. Yeah, we mentioned Bullard and Tillery, and that's something, but like we also mentioned that defensive tackle is a need anyway, so we should act as if Bullard and Tillery are departing free agents, whether or not, they're the ones that you want back. And yeah, and we already talked about it offensively that Josh Oliver might be a cap casualty. They probably want to be in 12 personnel, so you probably want to do something at tight end, even if you like Johnny Munt as tight end too. So I mean, like, there's like a lot of little. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, so there's like a lot of little areas where you have to throw $5 million here, $7 million here, and then of course we didn't even talk about like the offensive line, right? Like what's going to happen at guard. That's going to require, and so it's just a lot of snaps that you feel like you have to replace. That I think if you take a look at a team just more or just less than the Vikings in total cap dollars available to them for the 2025 offseason, they have fewer snaps that they have to replace. Maybe they want to replace more snaps, but they don't have to like the Vikings do. And so the flexibility is a little bit limited. I don't think it's like the Vikings are constrained. I just want to make the point that they're not as free as like the Chicago Bears are, who always happen to have like a ton of. I don't know what's going on with
constant because they don't have any players worth paying ever. So
no quarterback.
But they keep on they keep on winning free agency. At some point, you gotta
right. And then those players turn out bad.
The Terrell Edmonds have to catch up with you eventually, right? Like
right, but like
eventually one of those is going to be good.
Whether or not those players are not good or bad, like they have cap hits. It's like, where are those cap hits?
They always win free agency, but it's always like a million Keenan Allens. And then by like week 8, you're like, man, what happened here?
Yeah. Oh my God.
We got about 10 minutes left. Super Bowl. I thought it was the worst Super Bowl since Seattle, Denver. Like, there have been uglier Super Bowls like Patriots, Rams, or Broncos, Panthers, but at least they were close and bad, right? You can still be interested in a bad, close game and you'd be like, man, Cam Newton didn't dive on the fumble. Whereas that game last night was never close. Not even, it was over at halftime, which is so much less compelling. It sucked to see Patrick Mahomes be that bad and non-competitive because I wanted to see the two best quarterbacks go at. Okay, well, took a little.
Yeah, I liked the 43-8 game too. Like there comes a point. This is a point Greg Rosenthal made. There comes a point where a blowout becomes fun for its own reasons. Where I would much rather watch a game like that had like some really cool plays in it, and like it was all one. They were all Eagles plays, but there was some cool stuff going on in that game. Much more than I would watch like Cam Newton against the Broncos. That was
I thought one of my favorite plays was in total garbage mode. Eagles go for it on 4th down with Kenny Pickett. Don't get it. They get it at midfield. One play. It's like, they're going deep, dude. One play. Xavier Worthy. Great
just for
throw.
the pride of it.
Great.
Respect
it
so much.
Which
I love it. It was hilarious.
Xavier Worthy had 134, some 100+ yards, 2 touchdowns.
Monster game.
Yeah, that was the only betting thing I got right.
Yeah, and that's definitely going to be like a trivia answer down the road, right? Because no one's going to remember that. Right. That's crazy.
Yeah, he was the only Chiefs player to hit anything. I feel
Jahan Dotson first touchdown scorer almost.
Touchdown,
oh my God!
Prop holders absolutely devastated.
Oh,
that had to be. Well, then it got called back and it turned into Hurts, so we're good. But
DeAndre Hopkins' anytime touchdown scores must have been cackling like goblins late in the game, right? Like that must have been an insane beat to hit.
Yeah.
Especially after he dropped that one earlier.
How about the drop?
Yeah.
The sweat.
Vegas had to absolutely clean up on props because Kelsey and Barkley got wiped out. I mean, they always clean up.
And even A.J. Brown, dude.
No, that's a good
Brown,
point.
3 catches. 3 catches for A.J. Brown, too. Yeah.
Yep. And the one, again, a lot of what ifs. I mean, we can talk about the parlays. What ifs with Brown, who had the terrible penalty early in that game. And then on the DeAndre, if you like me, had a DeAndre Hopkins prop, and he drops that ball with an acre of open space over the middle. So my biggest personal what if, this wasn't part of our group bets. We'll get to that. That was a fiasco. I had a plus 7,000 on Devontae Smith yards, Devontae Smith touchdown, DeAndre Hopkins touchdown, DeAndre Hopkins 40 yards or more. And if Hopkins makes that catch over the middle, I'm hitting the 40. I'm hitting the bet. Because that was the only thing I missed. I was also
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's brutal, dude. That is so tough. It's not like he didn't have the opportunity. It's one thing when they just don't get the opportunity and not cash in on it and drop that pass. Oof.
Brutal.
Yeah.
And I had a plus 18,000 that hit two of three legs. Philly defensive touchdown hit. Hopkins touchdown hit. I needed a Mahomes rushing TD to hit.
Yeah,
been
the game just got away
He was
too much.
really
There
close,
wasn't enough
too.
garbage time. Yeah,
There's one in the red zone where he was. Oh my god, he was close.
So that was
dude.
now
Call
as a group.
up Vegas. Just tell them you were close, dude. They might.
Like,
they might hear you out. Hey,
Don't
dude,
they
I
have
was
a?
close, dude.
I mean, does FanDuel does the flex play right? Like Prize Picks does. Two out of 3, 4 out of 5. No,
Flex play parlay. I think you're looking for a teaser, Sam.
As a group,
should have round robin some of these. Yeah.
So here's what we ended up doing. We each did a $25 group bet. We each did our own bet, and we all kind of cheered for each other. Guess how many we got correct out of 24 possible legs? Arif, I told the other guys before the show, but Arif doesn't know. Out of 24 legs,
man,
how many?
I was briefly glancing at it, and some of these were contradictory, right? Because the Mahomes over and under were both in there.
Yeah.
But I was briefly glancing at it last night, and I was like, no. I'm going to say out of 24, we hit 10. It looked bad. I know Luke's parlay relied on a close game, right? Because it was Chiefs plus 4.5 and Eagles plus 6 or something like that.
Yep. And both team total overs 23.5. So only hit the Eagles side. Went 0 for 2 on the Chiefs side. Yep.
Let's say it hit that 2-point conversion, man.
Right.
Was that an octopus, by the way? Was that a Hopkins TD? No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. No.
Yeah, Hopkins scored the previous one. So as a group, we went 6 of 24 on parlay legs. 6 of 24. Arif went 1 of 7. Just gives
out. Ball.
Everybody, professional handicappers here.
Hey, look, I made money on our season-long bets. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. You're going out on a high note. You feel good. I just feel like, probably everybody got burned last night. Just the game flow did not go the way that most prop bettors needed it to go. And even a lot of times you'll get the garbage yards, the garbage catches at the end. There was just no opportunities for that after that, worthy bomb play. That pretty much only helped, obviously, Mahomes and Worthy, and that was it. Like, I needed a couple, maybe just 2 Kelsey garbage catches at the end, and, when they didn't get those onside kicks, too little, too late, but that was it.
Wait, what's the one I hit? Was it the Kelsey under 70 yards or something like that? Is that the only one I hit?
Yeah, I think it was.
Jesus Christ.
Barkley didn't hit. Brown didn't hit. You had Worthy under 20 for his
under 20. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That did not hit.
That was looking good for a while. He was quiet for the whole first half.
Looking great all game.
Yeah. And then he had a 50-yarder, and it's like, okay, great. You had a 2-yarder, a 1-yarder. All right.
Yeah.
Luke Braun, you wanted to get to one chat question before we conclude.
Burrito Bill asked, who is the Najee Thompson for this year? And the answer is Rayon Lane, safety out of Navy. Don't know if he can play safety at all, but he's a special teams ace, so he's going to make someone's team, even though he might not get drafted.
Of course he plays for Navy.
Might be the first Navy DB ever drafted, but it's like is he going to get taken in the 7th round or not? Kind of suspense.
Yeah, Iro, I was hoping that there would be a Wolves ownership announcement to hit the button for, but sadly we're not going to get that.
When the check clears.
Yeah, 940 million big ones. Thank you, Bad Dad Joke. We'll be back Thursday for more Vikings offseason talk. Free agency is a month away. Like tampering period, I think it's March 10th. We're going to be tampering 1 month from now. That's awesome. More prospects of the day. Probably already are. The hot takes will continue, but the bad NFL parlays will stop for a while. We don't have any more.
That's too bad.
When does spring
an act of mercy?
Draft props, combine props.
Oh, yeah. We got to do this.
Get on Prize Picks for those because they put out some numbers that will make your brain melt.
They are Certainly numbers. That is for sure.
Unless they fix their thing, but the last couple of years, that has been a money printer. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That's a pro tip. For Luke Braun, Locked On Vikings, Arif Hasan, Wide Left Substack, Luke Inman. The postcasts after every Wolves game right now. Wolves are playing well. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Thanks for watching, listening, subscribing, and all of you who commented live. We appreciate that. Talk to you next time.